everybody, welcome to the Mills Team webinar. Today we're going to talk about some frequently asked questions that we get from buyers. So we hope you maybe learned something new or use this as a little refresher, but we're excited to get chatting about our favorite subject. So just as a reminder, we've got Mike Adams, hello, Sarah O'Neill, and Katie Mills, Lauren Rebecca, Sue Mills, and Christine Sweeney. So we're gonna do something a little bit fun today. We've got this fun bowl of questions. So I'm gonna go first so we see how it's done, and then we will go from there. So my question is, should I have a deposit check ready for the offer night, and how much should it be? So yes, absolutely. Deposit check with your offer is the strategic thing to do. It should really be a bank draft. It's typically around 5% of the purchase price, but if you want to increase that, it will make your offer that much more attractive to the seller.
And attractable.
Attractable too, why not? More the better. And I'm going to pass the bowl to Lauren.
Is it my turn?
She's going to pick a question.
All right.
We actually really don't know what questions we're pulling here.
Yeah, I'm going deep. Come on, big money. Okay. Okay, how much of a down payment do I need? So the short answer of this is if you're spending less than $1 million, you can get away with less of a down payment. It's basically 7.5%, but it's actually a sliding scale. It's 5% on the portion that's zero to
price.
Yeah, the purchase price. So 5% of the portion of 0 to 500,000, and then 10% between 500,000 and $1 million. So it kind of averages out to 7.5. If you spend over $1 million, which in our city a lot of people have to do, you need at least 20% down.
Exactly.
Katie, am I passing the bowl to Sue?
Sure.
Okay.
Around we go.
Lucky number 3.
The
And the good news is that it's short enough I don't have to put my glasses on. Who pays a realtor when buying a home? So probably like most questions, it depends, but 99.9% of the time it's paid by the seller. There's usually a listing agreement in place, usually on the MLS system, and the seller of the property who has the listing agreement with the listing agent, that portion, the total commission is usually split between the seller's agent and the buyer's agent. So that's the nice thing about when you're buying, you get hit with land transfer tax, but the nice thing is we're free.
Great. I'll steal this from you. All right. So I have, what does the irrevocable time and date mean? So when you're putting in an offer, you will fill out the irrevocable time and date, or your realtor will do that for you. So this is the time and date that your offer is valid until. After that time, the seller cannot accept your offer anymore. It's not considered a good deal anymore. I'm going to pass this across the table.
You didn't even wipe out any of the glass. Good thing I didn't do that. I would have wiped out everyone along. Unless it was bowling, then I would have missed them all.
That was a good slide. All right, so in a multiple offer situation, is the seller obligated to give a buyer a chance to improve their offer? So plain and simple, the sellers aren't obligated. It really is situational. It depends on how many offers, if they're good or bad offers. So technically, no. However, in a multiple offer situation, it might be in their best interest to give buyers a second chance. So, it is no, but yes.
Usually.
Right.
Usually you get a
It's
second
very
chance, but
situational
you can
based.
never be guaranteed that
Right.
second chance. So that's why we always kind of say to our buyers, you have to at least be in the game. You have to have your offer strong enough that they're at least if you're not the best offer, the seller's going to be at least tempted to come back and ask you if you can do more.
Right.
Yeah. And I always love that question. The seller says, well, if I get an offer, I absolutely have to accept the offer. I'm like, no, I mean, you have the right to accept, negotiate, or reject completely.
Yep.
So, but like you were saying, and we were talking about it earlier, a lot of our sellers, they have options, and we find a lot of times the offers, if in multiple offers, tend to be close. There's a few that are usually close in price. So as a result, right, sometimes they end up giving them a second chance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say the really important thing too is communicating with your agent, because if we know what your true goal is, then that allows us to represent you properly in that negotiation.
Yeah, good
point. If you, for example, said to your agent, oh, this is the absolute maximum I want to pay, but didn't communicate that to us, and we, anyway, just that openness between us is super helpful so that we can
Yeah. Okay. I was trying to read through the bowl, but I have no idea what I'm getting here. Hopefully it's not hard. If I want to submit an offer without any conditions, how can I mitigate the risks? Well, that's a really good question. Certainly in this competitive, sort of heated market we've been in for really years, a lot of buyers end up putting in offers that are firm. So that's where our role is key to advising you and trying to mitigate risk on your behalf. That's our job, right? So certainly it's doing enough due diligence, making sure we're working with, your mortgage person, your banker, whoever that might be, to make sure we've got your financing rock solid, that we're confident enough to go in, doing as much due diligence around the house itself, doing a home inspection, perhaps they've provided a home inspection, reading that through thoroughly, doing our own eye check around the house itself. So our job is to help mitigate that hopefully need to put in a condition, because it's pretty tough to win in this market with conditions. So lots of work needed to get there, but that's where we come in to help you.
Right, and also the pricing research we do too, so that on the financing, because the financing is always on the two ends. One, does the house qualify, and two, does the buyer qualify? So as long as exactly what you said, working with the financing person to make sure the buyer qualifies, and then us giving as much guidance as possible on what the house is actually worth.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, here we go. Round one done.
Round two.
What if something is broken or damaged before the closing or after the closing? That is an excellent question. Typically, we put a clause in the offer that says that everything will be in proper working order on the closing date, and it only applies to that property at that closing date. So, for example, if the stove breaks the day before closing, the seller would replace or repair that stove. If it happens the day after closing, then the buyer would take care of that. There is the odd exception of something that will be carried out past the closing date, but that would be specified in the agreement. For example, if it was the winter time and there's a swimming pool, there may be some sort of warranty that goes beyond, because that pool can't be open till the spring.
And that's why, that's why the revisits are so helpful, right? So we always build the revisits into the offer so that we can go back, usually on average twice, but we usually try and make that second one, right, just before closing, so that we can do another check to make sure everything is in working order on closing.
Awesome. Miss Lauren?
I'm up again. Okay. All right. What are the costs associated with buying a property outside of the home price? So there's a few. We actually have a fabulous spreadsheet that itemizes all of these for our buyers.
You probably made the spreadsheet.
So
I'm
many.
guessing, so
Yeah. Well, it's evolved. We've all pitched in. But the biggest, right? So land transfer tax. It's huge. And then I think the next biggest one is probably your lawyer's fees. So that's the lawyer to sort of work on your behalf and do the closing and all of those documents at the end. It depends if you're buying a house or a condo. If you're buying a house, you might have a home inspection that you have to pay for, or a condo, maybe a status certificate, although that's usually paid for by the seller. What else?
Sometimes
It might be an appraisal. There might be not usually.
Adjustments.
They'll waive that.
Yeah, so that would be kind of with
And they're
the
moving
lawyer.
expenses, of course, we
Yeah.
always factor
Yeah.
that in. And if they want a small rental budget, that would be built into their spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's definitely, we'll put that in the spreadsheet too.
And the other thing there could be too is if there could be bridge financing costs. So if you're
Yes.
carrying
Yeah.
both properties for a period of time, you could have.
They don't have that same closing date.
Yeah, without the same closing date. Yeah, so the bank may lend the property the money you would otherwise get from the proceeds of your sale for a short period of time, usually up to 90 days, and then you could have that interest charge, and that's usually a higher interest rate than what you'd pay on your mortgage. So I think right now, bridge financing interest rates are, I think, kind of 7 or 8%. Yeah. But it's usually for a short period of time.
Yeah.
So.
And I highly recommend it, having just gone through a move. You don't want to do that all in one day. It is awful.
The move, the buy and the sell on the same
sell
day.
The buy and the
day?
sell on the same day.
Yeah,
You want that bridge
You can
financing.
avoid it, yeah.
Yeah,
It's so worth it.
It's a nightmare. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Sue.
Okay. Comes around so fast. On a condo, what is a status certificate? And should I make my offer conditional on my lawyer reviewing it? It's another good question. So when you buy a condo, by law, everybody who buys a condo is entitled to receive what's called a status certificate within 10 days of buying the property. So that's the rules and the regulations of the condo, the financial health, the budget, whether there's anything, special assessments being anticipated, so extra costs being allocated to the individual buyers. Are there any lawsuits pending against the condominium corporation? So everybody's entitled to that within 10 days of buying. But the truth is, it doesn't really help you to get that information 10 days later. You actually want to know what that information is before putting in the offer. So when we list a condo property, obviously we provide that status certificate in advance so that buyers, their agents, their lawyers can review it before putting an offer in. But that isn't always the case. Often, most times, the listing agents actually don't provide that status certificate in advance. So what we would typically then do is make the offer conditional for 3 business days after receiving that status certificate on the buyer's lawyer reviewing it. When it gets really tough, obviously, is if you're in competition and the listing agent hasn't provided the status certificate, and now your buyer needs to make a decision on whether they go firm and without that condition. So many times, you just called me the other day, so many times what we end up calling around, we look through what have the sales been in the building, okay, do we know those agents, do they have a status certificate that's just been reviewed? So we've done that so many times,
and
oh my God.
Thankfully, been really lucky with
so
that.
So good, and we've had agents call us too, and we're happy to share that information.
Yeah, and also having a great lawyer that will review a status certificate
God,
quickly.
Oh my God.
We're so blessed that we have some pretty amazing lawyers that will,
on the weekends.
On the weekends.
In the evening.
And I'm sure they see our emails come across at Saturday at 10 o'clock going, are you kidding me?
And the one other thing that's really important is the rules of the condo corp, like that's in that status certificate, because I just had like a firsthand experience recently where, again, the pet rules, like knowing that you can, of course you say you can have a dog, yes. But then the dog can only be 25 pounds and the dog's 45 pounds. And it's like, can the dog go on a diet? No. I don't think they can lose 20 pounds in a month. So, the rules are so critical too, making sure we know,
and that's really the only way of really knowing what the rules are. They had it written in the status certificate. Sometimes agents will say, oh yeah, large dogs allowed. Well, no.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And sometimes even seeing one in the building, but maybe it was an old rule that was grandfathered and
really
used to allow 50-pound
that's a
dogs,
really good
but
point.
now
Yeah.
Smaller dogs. So
really
always
good
good to check for sure.
Okay,
Christine.
I'm going to take this large one that everyone's avoiding.
I know, I saw that. I'm like, that looked way too much of a question. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, what are the first-time home buyer programs? So the main one that most people take advantage of is the RRSP withdrawal. So right now you can withdraw up to $35,000 tax-free, and you have to repay that over 15 years. The next major one would be the tax incentive. So that's a federal program, and you get up to $1,500 back on your taxes. That was just increased before the federal budget was released. It was $750, so they've doubled that.
Go to McDonald's, woo!
Another one of the really common ones that's used is the land transfer tax rebate. So that would be no land transfer tax on a home up to $368,000, and then you just pay the difference above that. So that's the equivalent of, I believe, $8,475 to be exact.
Look at you, good girl. Look at you. You must have just done a deal. Good girl.
And then the final one is the tax-free first home savings account, the TFFHSA. That's the new account that's the hybrid between the TFSA and the RSP, where starting next year you'll be able to contribute up to $8,000 a year for $40,000 total, and you'll get the rebate as well as having anything that you earn in there tax-free. So it's a hybrid between the TFSA and the RSP.
That's going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's helpful. Very helpful.
Okay, I think we've got time for 2 more questions
Two more?
here.
Okay,
Wrap it up
good.
here,
Yes.
guys.
Oh, yes, because
Awesome.
I'm going to have to go in.
Okay, this is also a good question. Do I need permission to renovate my condo? Generally speaking, the answer is yes. Things like if you were to paint your own, if you were to paint yourself, if you're paint your own place, you could get around maybe by not asking. But generally speaking, I think we always just say better safe than sorry and just at least let them know. Obviously, anything structural, absolutely. Flooring, you would definitely need to let them know. So, yeah, I mean, again, going back to the condo rules, making sure, specifically if you need to ask, like that will be in there as well. So generally speaking, yes.
Right, and usually you have to book an elevator at a minimum, so the property manager kind of needs to know when your renovations are.
And there's restrictions on the hours, and the noise.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and the other one that I was just talking to one of our clients about as well is because in most, when we write offers for condos, we always write a clause in that says that the seller has not done anything in default of the condo rules.
Right.
Because we want to make sure our buyer is not taking on any issues. And so, again, the seller has to make sure, or the person buying the condo, make sure they're following the rules always, right? So it's really different than a house. And it's a big education when someone's coming from a house to a condo, i.e. me. Can't just do what I want anymore. Okay.
All right, last question.
Last question. Okay. How much is land transfer tax and who pays for it? Okay, another good question. So there are, if you live in Toronto, lucky us, there's two land transfer taxes. There's the city tax and there's the provincial tax. If you live outside of Toronto, it's just the one tax, just the provincial. So, and roughly, you know, it's 2% for each of them. So approximately 4%. So the buyer pays for it. So it is a big part of our spreadsheet. It's a big part of us talking about your extra expenses when you're buying. And like if you were buying $1 million property, you're basically paying, if you're in Toronto and you're not a first-time buyer, you're paying like $33,000 in land transfer. I know it's hard to hear that number. Yes. So
But then if you're a first-time buyer, like Christine said, what was that number?
$8,475.
Well done.
this is our numbers person.
Oh, Christian, what was that
Banker.
number again?
This is our banker who's just joined the team.
So I think we're going to cut it off. Thank you for being with us today. As you can tell, this is our favorite subject. We could go on and on, so we'll force ourselves not to. We hope you've learned some new things, or maybe been reminded, or maybe it's prompted a new question. We'd love for you to reach out to us at any time. We love to talk real estate. Thanks for watching.
Hi guys, thanks.